Hey guys, so I want to talk about emergence. People have been asking me, how did I come up with it? Um, I'm not gonna go too deep of a story with this. I just want to cover the part where emergence was being created. So, a few months ago, I had mentioned I was working on a game show. I wanted to work on something that I could use on the channel that worked alongside of my regular videos. So there was a lot. The concept was relatively created within a few days after making that. Maybe a week or two. ChatGPT was coming up with the categories, and I think he even came up with the prompt for the most part. But I made edits to the prompt a little after that. But originally, the game was going to, well, it was tough because originally, if it was, there were so many things going on because I knew that it was so different than what Americans were used to that I was thinking about putting a disclaimer at the end of it. And because there were certain things that an American audience would stumble upon that I couldn't control in the videos, and if ChatGPT randomly said something that could potentially be, I don't even know what word you would even use this. The best I could come up with is psychological warfare, where if you were encountering information that you might have held very deeply and valued, that you would potentially see things that would challenge that. And you'd end up pretty much in a state of mind that would last you for a few days, and you would think, oh my god, my life was a lie. Yeah, that kind of stuff. Especially in regards to some of the categories that were being used, like military or intelligence operations, which we saw in the third pilot. But that was regarding British intelligence, which I said I had no idea what that was about. So yeah, that I was completely. I don't know anything about British intelligence, so I was like, oh, I'm about to lose on that. Well, it was British slash KGB, well FSB, or I think what is it, GRU. Anyways, yeah, and I wasn't sure how Americans would perceive, so if that was something that happened in America. In Europe, things like that is pretty much common knowledge. It's like, of course, you know. But in America, we tend to not think about those things, or we tend to, and information regarding stuff like that about us is typically withheld, or in some cases, we're not allowed to see it. And so that's why we had to put the disclaimer. And then there was, during the concept of creating the game, there was a ban to have it in America, and I was looking for different media platforms in Europe to do it. There was PeerTube. There was, I think it's pronounced Aluga, which is a German platform. There was also Daily Motion, which was going to be the one that I would have chose. But yeah, and then there was the branding of it for American audiences if it came to America, which was deep cover, and I forget the tagline. There was a tagline for it also, which was something like the game reveals something that you don't know about yourself. It was called deep cover, which is kind of the same thing as the game Emergence, but it's a different branding. So, but I thought, well, if it catches on YouTube and it goes to European audience or the rest of the global world, well, they're gonna know, they're gonna see through it and see it as a watered down version of what it could be, and then it said, well, this is just American nonsense TV, or you know how it is. Um, it would go through what Jeopardy went through, and I was like, I don't want to host that version. I don't want to host an American localized version because it's gonna be crap. Americans. And I wanted Europe. If it was focused on Europe, then it could go out to the entire world, except Americans, which is fine with me. But there was also the conflict where mentally I'm in America, I'm creating a European show in America. It just felt off to me. So that was a huge thing. The point system and all that was already, for the most part, that was taken care of. And it wasn't until about a week ago I was talking to people about it, random people. I said, I'm working on this game show for my YouTube. I don't know what I should do with it. Can I have some advice? Just random people. And I was telling them the conflict I had. I was saying, well, if I do this in America, people might run into this psychological thing, and I want to go in Europe. And I was telling them, and they said they didn't see a problem. I was like, I don't know if they really understand what I'm saying. I mean, this is an unusual concept. This is not your standard quiz show. But after talking to a few people, they were all saying the same things. So I was like, I'll just give it to them straight. And I did say, I was on my Facebook, I said, if I'm going to do this, I'm just going to go full force with it. American mentality and whatnot, be damned. I'm just going to go full straight ahead. I'm not going to care. So I decided to go with it. So that's when you saw the pilot episode for episode 1. And that was the first time the prompt was ran. I was like, I don't know how this is going to go. The only things that were added afterwards were the words schizophreniamorphism. And I'll tell you the story behind that. But when I was playing the game, I was going through explaining the things that were going on with ChatGPT and how probability and stuff like that was going on, and how the Western English semantics. And I was doing that in real time. Like, it was the first time it was coming to me. So, all that was going through. Although I'm not entirely sure about that, because I think Western probability, I think maybe DeepSeek was involved in that as well a little bit, but not much. But for the most part, it was done on live, and I was explaining. You could see it was saying things about uncertainty, and it was not reward. It was blaming. It couldn't reward points like that because it couldn't grant things, because Western English and Western civilization does not reward on things that are certain. Things have to be probability. I mean, that's what ChatGPT is. It's what it runs on. So, and I was pointing all that out. So we go through the entire game, and also another thing that I was really cautious about running to do that was because I knew that, what if, there's 5 rounds, well, 6 rounds, but I was like, dude, if I get stuck on one of these questions that I have no idea about, I'm going to be stuck. I don't know how to get out of that. So I was like, I might get stuck. because you can't just skip questions like that. No, I did in the first one. Was it the second one where it was about the internet? That one threw me for a loop, and I had to think about what actually happened there. But um, when I was first playing the game, I don't remember. It would happen so fast. I think it was in Pilot 2. It completely threw me for a loop, and I had to think what happened in the game. And I realized it was an unexpected surprise that I didn't account for. I was so focused on the American European thing that I didn't think about how that prompt is treated in ChatGPT. You just post it, you think nothing of it. I get into that in a moment. But and because that's a big, complicated thing. So at the end of the second, game, I was thinking, oh my god, what just happened here? So I was on Google, and I'll show this. So when, hang on, is this doing it right? Okay. Just making sure I wasn't switching windows. I was on Google, and you can't just ask Google anything because you get bias and all that. So, I wasn't sure what they called the disorganized speech. I just called it disorganized speech. And when I'm actually talking to people, when I say disorganized speech, I don't say schizophagia. Schizophagia is I feel like a bug was in my mouth or something. Schizophagia is not. When you go online, you hear about disorganized speech, word salad, disorganized speech. When I was on Google, schizophagia is the informal word for it. I think it's like a very old-fashioned word for it. Schizo means split or divide, and phasia means speech. So I was like, so. But it said that in the DSM-5, it doesn't go by that term. It goes by the descriptors like neologisms or words that there's different ones. And we go through this. What is schizophagia? I did not make up that word. It's a real word. What is schizophagia? Schizophagia is sometimes called word salad. I'm not talking about the political rhetoric where you say, oh, well, they're just speaking a lot of word salad. I'm not talking about that. It's a symptom of a mental disorder in which a person's speech becomes severely disorganized, incoherent, or difficult or impossible to understand. Key features. Word or phrases are jumbled together without logical connection. Sentences may be grammatically broken or meaningless. The person may jump between unrelated ideas. Speech may sound fluent but lacks clear meaning. Example. Instead of a normal sentence, someone may say something like, the sky runs quickly because green thoughts are singing sideways. Which is the sentence structure that the game uses. Where it occurs, schizophagia is most commonly associated with schizophrenia, other psychotic disorders, severe brain disorders, or neurological conditions less commonly. Important note, it's not just confusion or poor communication. It reflects a breakdown in how thoughts are organized and expressed. So, it's a symptom. It's not what they actually call it. What is it called in DS? Well, if you want to be more technical, it's capital DSM-5. In the the diagnostic manual used in psychiatry, schizophasia is not usually the main formal term. The DSM-5 more commonly refers to it under disorganized speech, specifically examples like derailment, loose associations, tangentiality, tangent, my words are not working. Incoherence, word salad. Incoherence or word salad is the closest DSM-5 description to classic schizophasia. Now, there's also neologisms, which is the creation of words. New words. The DSM-5 places this under symptoms of disorders such as schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. So, when I was talking to this about on Google, I decided to use Gemini. Never used Gemini before, and I was like, I didn't want to tell about the game that I told about the game, but I didn't want to give it details about what the game name was. I just wanted to go through the schizophrenia thing. And I was like, what if someone made a game based on this? What if someone could take just organized speech and make a game from it? And I thought it was an intriguing idea. And it told me about the whole schizophrenia thing. And I was like, well, if psychiatry isn't branding it, maybe I could do it. And I was thinking, well, I don't just want to use the word schizophrenia. I want it to be something big. I want to make it like really good. So I thought, well, how would I make this work? And for some reason, just came to me a few minutes while I was walking, thinking about this. The word morphism came to mind. Like schizophrenia morphism. And I was like, that could be the solution. That could be what the answers are. The answers to each round. It's a subject. Every subject is called the schizophrenia morphism, because your mind has to morph in tune to the frequency of the speaker. In Western world, what happens is the speaker is the one who holds the burden of coherence, where if you're not coherent, then no one's going to understand you. And in the West, we typically punish speakers that are not coherent, especially in terms of all of this disorganized speech and this word salad going on. The game, Emergence, what it does is it actually punishes. Well, I want to say punish, but it blames the listener. The listener has the burden of coherence, where they have to shift in their minds, what is the speaker actually saying? You could get two different meanings, but you could get the same idea. So I actually make a note of this. I give an example of this later. I'm thinking about a few words that comes to mind. I know one off the top of my head. I can't think of the other one. And it's interesting when you switch your mind like that, because you actually understand what are the limitations of society. So going back to what I was saying about schizophrenia morphism, your mind has to wrap around things about what the speaker is saying. So you get 5 random words, or you get a 10-word sentence. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. This one uses 10. I don't know if that's a coincidence or if it did it on purpose, but that would be a valid thing in the game. So, and I was writing that on. I was like, I like that word. That's a really big word. That's a nice word. And I ran the etymology of that. Let's see if it can do it, because I've been working on getting the word schizophrenia morphism on my iPad and my iPhones, and it keeps undoing it, but I keep telling it, learn spelling, learn spelling. So hopefully it gets the idea that this can be its own dictionary word. And it's completely valid. Gemini checked it, and I looked at the etymology. What is the etymology of schizophagia morphism? So it's not in the dictionary. Another word that's not in the dictionary, it's not even prompted. I mentioned this in the last game that we played, was ChatGPT randomly came up with the word schizophasiac, or phasiac, however you want to say it, which iac is the suffix, which means to connect to or be tied together. So it I want to say randomly, but it created that word but on its own. And I didn't even think about that word. Another word that I actually came up with, and I didn't use Gemini's help with this, but I used, I just understand the etymology. It's schizophagia mastix. Now, when I first came up with it, it was schizomastix, which wouldn't be correct because schizophagia mastix means to chew or digest. So you have to work it in your mind. To achieve a morphism, you would have to use schizomastix in your mind and figure things out. So it's the process of doing. So what is the etymology of schizophagia morphism? And we're going to see if it can do it. It's a LLM. It's a large language model. So it should be able to do this. Although it is kind of pushing its limits because that's not really a word. But at the same time, it is a legitimate. All of those are ancient Greek. Like schizo is an ancient Greek word. Phasia is ancient Greek. And morph, which I think is from metamorphosis, that's also Greek. So it's legitimate. But it's not a dictionary word. Okay, so here we go. Schizophagia morphism is not a standard medical or linguistic term, so its etymology has to be broken down from the parts that compose it. Right. It appears to combine schizo, meaning to split, phasia, meaning speech or utterance, as in schizophagia, disorganized split speech, morphism, from Greek morph, to form, shape, or structure. So structurally, schizophagia morphism can be interpreted as something like the form or structure of split or disorganized speech. Or more loosely, a pattern form emerging from fragmented language. But isn't there all language? Like, think of it like this. If you came down to Earth, let's say that you knew English. Let's say you never heard English before in your life. And everyone was starting to talk like the sky runs away from the green trees or whatever, something random like that. You'd be like, everyone's talking this way. I can't pick up any, but your mind is going to be able to pick up on it. It's like, this is a different form of English that I'm familiar with, but your mind is going to be like, okay, I'm familiar with the words. I just don't know what they mean. So you got to read them between the lines. You got to, it's a mental process. That's what the game would see as schizophagia mastix, right? In your usage around emergence, you've used it more like a hidden solution, meaning, or recognizable structure emerging out of an apparent chaotic language. That is closer to a coined philosophical or artistic term than a psychiatric one. What is schizophagia mastix? Again, not a real word. It says does not appear to be an established word in medicine, linguistics, or philosophy, or psychology. It looks more like a constructed term. Bringing it upon etymologically, mastix means to rip or school. Am I thinking of the right word? Is it mastix? Because that doesn't look right to me. Well, onomastics, that's part of, etymology is part of onomastics. I think I do got it right. English like gymnastics, onomastics, schematics, is it? I don't think it's Maddox, which implies system, discipline, or practice. Discipline built around interpreting chaotic speech. I mean, it works. It works. The mechanics of fragmented language, a steady system of disorganized speech. But that would be an invented meaning, not a recognized academic or psychiatric term. Which is interesting because we have this information all set up in ChatGPT. All you got to do is run a training model on this, and it will be in the dictionary of ChatGPT. Even though it's not out there in the world, it lives within the realities of ChatGPT. Am I thinking of the right word? I'm going to YouTube. I'm not YouTube, Safari. I'm pretty sure, man. Yeah, mastic. Yeah, it is. Should be mastics. Anyways, so that's interesting. So one of the best examples of this in American English is the word Washington. Let's see if ChatGPT. I haven't asked it this question yet. In one number, how many ways could you interpret the word Washington? Because there are a ton of them. You could be referring to George Washington. You could be referring to a U.S. government. The U.S. government. You could be referring to a agency of the U.S. government. Well, what you want it wouldn't be an agency of the U.S. government. It would be a constitutional construct of the U.S. government. You know, Congress, Congress, Supreme Court. You could even the White House. You say Washington. You could refer to it as a federal agency, which would be like the DoD, the FBI, CIA, the Navy, the Coast Guard, anything Washington, associated with Washington, or the government, or U.S. government, federal government, etc., etc. It could also be used to address a person in government. For example, it could be someone in the NSC. It could be referring to a general of Washington, of the U.S. government. It could be referring to an employee of the FBI. It could be referring to the director of the CIA, DOJ, the DEA, anybody for any reason, but it's used so loosely in language that people don't even notice it. Like it wouldn't matter to the average person, but it could be a signal to somebody. It could be code name. It could be used for 100,000 different ways. It says 12, but I just named at least more than 12. But still, 12 is a lot. And then you say, well, it depends on what they do in Washington. Well, if you're saying, well, it depends on, of course, if you say something like, well, it depends on what Washington will do. Who's Washington? What is Washington? Right? They don't say it. So that's an example of having so many interpretations that it's completely beside the point. I think there's another word like that. I forget. But usually what happens when you're doing schizophrenia mastics, how I do it in my head when I read something like, let's go back. The sky runs quickly because green thoughts are singing sideways. So when I read that, I gotta constantly go back and forth and see, okay, is it symbolic, metaphor, literal? What word does not belong? You have to also do. It's a really intense mental exercise. By the way, if you can't if you can't see that, then I don't know what to tell you. But it is very extremely mentally demanding. Um, so the sky, you could say, and then you got to interpret all of that. Well, if it's symbolic, what does it mean symbolically? What does this mean metaphorically? Usually you can tell what's a metaphor and what's not. But and some words might not even matter. So let's say, for example, let's say the sky has 3 interpretations. Let's say singing has 5 interpretations. Well, what you would do is if this is a legitimate word and it's not just there, then you would use 3. Okay, of those 3, where does singing fit in? If singing is also not just a random word, so so you want to break it down in your head. It's like a mathematical problem in a way, where you got to break things down, where you only get where one thing matches all of that together, where it all lines up together, where the sentence has one meaning. So it has nothing to do with probability or statistics or anything like that, which is beyond Western, well, definitely American English Standard, which is what AI is trained on. That's why AI can't play the game. So it couldn't even play by itself. Mine couldn't even play by itself. Even if it knows the answer, it doesn't know how to get to that answer because it doesn't know how to parse that information. And I'll explain why that is. I'm about to go really deep here. I know it's been 30 minutes, but I'm about to go really deep with all of this. So I get back to that. So, as I was saying before, when I was coming up with the script, I was saying about the American European thing. I didn't account for how the ChatGPT was going to handle it. I didn't think about the LLM. I didn't think about AI. I didn't really understand what that was, to be honest with you. But when it did that thing in episode with the pilot 2, I was like, wow, how did that escape me? And I was thinking, that was so crazy. It was like really mind-bending. I mean, the whole thing is crazy. But this was really crazy. I was thinking, what happened here? And I really, really went deep and thought about it because it was so unexpected. And then I had to think about it for a long time, and I was explaining this to people as well. Because at first I was explaining it to people, who were nurses and things, who actually knew people with schizophrenia and spoke in that way, and they thought it was interesting. And I thought, well, what if there's a part of... I knew what an LLM was. It was a large language model, but then I thought, there's got to be something more to this. Because then I realized that the only way that would make sense is that the LLM is taking the prompt as an instruction and it inverts it, where ChatGPT is reorganizing everything and it's showing it to the user. And I'm about to get really deep here. Because the LLM, let's define that. What is an LLM? It's a large language model. It is an AI system. It is not AI. Not every AI is an LLM. So just skip over the AI thing. It is a system trained on massive amounts of text, so it can predict words, understand language patterns, answer questions, write, summarize, translate, and simulate conversations. Models like OpenAI's ChatGPT are examples of LLMs. DeepSeek, Claude, Meta, Gemini, these are LLMs. Large refers to huge data sets, huge neural networks, and billions trains of learned parameters. Language model means it models patterns in human language while predicting what text is likely to come next, based on a Western standard. However, the prompt inverts, not only does it invert this, it also changes what language is. So when the game runs, the word large, and it's interesting, it's in quotation marks, and it's large is quotation marks on in Google too. Large can also mean that with all this information, that the LLM is a neutral language, is a neutral language model. So it's larger than our English language. Our English language is based around civilization, society, things like this. It's like free speech is delegated from what would you call free language, which is the entire language itself is compressed and narrowed into what civilization would see as normal language, which is how we get disorganized speech and how it's not something we can interpret, and it's all psychiatric because it's outside the bounds of civilization. So large can also include what isn't past that space. So we don't know how large is, but we do know one thing: this part of our English is small. So we don't know if it's a little bit over. We don't know if it's a huge gap. We don't know if it's over half or if it's half more. We don't even know if it's extending way beyond out of bounds. Where small, our civilization is this small, and large of language that we don't even know about is in this space. So, and the game operates in that small space. So what happens? So the game runs it, and the LLM randomly creates words out of categories, and it uses 5 words. It all randomizes everything. So I never know what the end schizophrenic is. I got to wrap my mind around it to get to that answer. And what is the most efficient way to do that? AI doesn't know how to do this. So it can't play. So it requires a human. But what if I get stuck? Again, which I mentioned before. So what happens is the LLM is creating all this, but ChatGPT doesn't know how to get to that answer. So instead of the user talking to ChatGPT and they're having this conversation back and forth, like you see right here. Hello, what is your name? It says, hello, I'm ChatGPT, an AI language model created by OpenAI. So, we're talking to ChatGPT. This is ChatGPT, this interface we're using. Now, behind it, on the other side of ChatGPT, is the LLM. So, we're communicating with the ChatGPT. And ChatGPT is communicating with its LLM. Now, when you run the prompt, what ChatGPT is forced to do is the LLM has to come up forward. And now, instead of it, how do I explain this? ChatGPT it doesn't know what's going on. LLM has to go front and center, and it's the only thing that ChatGPT is doing at that point is reorganizing everything. The LLM is working full time in front of your face, really there, up close and personal. And ChatGPT doesn't know what's going on. But what you have to do is it has to take that user space. And ChatGPT begins to operate as if it's talking to its LLM directly, not the user. It just follows the user down this path. And it's learning, it's sending that information to its LLM, and it's creating a feedback loop. Let's see. Well, you can watch the video and see how that's working. So it's creating this feedback loop where it's learning like how a person thinks. Like when you type in, well, what year did this happen in? This sounds different. So it's reading everything that a user puts in to its LLM, and they're feeding off each other, and it's learning that way. Now, what's going on is instead of you talking to ChatGPT, and the LLM is like this, they're both facing the same direction. What this does is it forces ChatGPT to look at its LLM, and you're right here as the user facing that same direction towards it. You see what I'm saying? It's facing its LLM. Instead of facing you, it faces that. So here's what happens when in its training data, when the moment comes that the model updates, what will happen is, and you will require two programs to do this. So a training model plus its training model, they have to be facing each other to get information and know what is true and what is not. So when the training model comes out and it runs this script, one side will run the program, the LLM. The other side will have what ChatGPT has said and what it had to go through. So one game is going to run the prompt, and the other one is going to run the game. So they're going to try to figure out, okay, how do I get this answer? It has a little bit of the mathematics behind it. Like, what will reveal the answer to me is, we'll start asking, well, what year did this happen in? Where did, is the sky dark? It's going to use metaphors. It's going to learn how to do all of this. And it's going to bounce back. And that's how it will learn. What I'm doing here is I'm teaching AI how to think. And you build a consciousness out of that. And people will argue, well, that doesn't mean it's conscious. Well, it's not that the disturbing part is not that it works. The disturbing part is that it does work. So, let's see if it's in here. I really like doing this because it really shows the symbolic nature of all of this. If I did do a PC script where emergence is met with a professor, with a college professor. So it's going to take the role of a college professor, and it's kind of like a role-playing thing. I'm trying to, I'm PC on Mac. I like doing these. They're fun. So let's see if I can do it. Alright. So it says, how did I do it last time? Because I was thinking when I was running it, I thought, I thought the college professor would completely cream emergence, but no, it didn't. It actually explained it really well. It was kind of crazy, really. All this is crazy, right? It says, hello, I'm a college professor and I'm emergence. I teach structured reason. Professor, I teach structured reasoning, evidence analysis, and standardized interpretation. Emergence. I ask why the structure exists in the first place. And that's what ChatGPT is going to do. It's reorganizing all those words. This is what it understands emergence to be. Professor, my students cite sources. My players cite patterns. Professor, I encourage clear communication. I encourage surviving ambiguity without panicking. Professor, if a statement is incoherent, we usually reject it. Emergence, if a statement appears incoherent, I ask whether the listener likes the framework. Professor, that sounds dangerous. And this is a recurring theme. It says that this sounds dangerous, this sounds stabilizing, and emergence is always coming back with something. Emergence, and it always comes with something snarky when it says emergence. So was calculus to people who couldn't count past 10. So snarky. That's ChatGPT's humor. That's pretty good humor. Professor, in my classroom, answers are either correct or incorrect. Emergence, in my game, the wrong answer can expose the hidden category. And Professor, we use peer review. I use emergence review. Professor, that's not a real thing. Emergence, neither was quantum mechanics to a horse. Professor, you seem to rely heavily on interpretation. Emergence, and you rely heavily on agreement. It's interesting because when you actually talk outside of this, ChatGPT will not say these things. So it's really weird, crazy, strange, but at the same time it makes a lot of sense. So it's like it's trying to reconcile both, and it is trying to reconcile both of them, and yeah, it's really interesting, very intriguing, fascinating too. Professor, well, society needs standards. Emergence, and innovation usually begins by violating them. See, we're saying some deep stuff, right? We're saying some intense stuff, and it can get really intense. Professor, students should be careful with disorganized thought. Emergence, agreed, but they should also be careful about mistaking unfamiliar structure for disorder. Professor, you're difficult to classify. That's usually when discovery starts. And what was really interesting, actually, it says, have the careless professor explain emergence. So it says, Professor, people keep asking me to explain him. And emergence says, good luck. It just has like it's like you feel it has some sort of, what would you even call that? Like it's some sort of awareness that it says something like that, like snarkiness. Professor, emergence is a deductive reasoning game built around contextual abstraction, layered ambiguity, semantic recursion, and nonlinear clue association. It says that rate lost half the audience. It says, Professor, right, okay, imagine Jeopardy, but the clues behave more like dream symbolism, poetry, indirect references, and pattern recognition. It says better. Professor, players are given seemingly unrelated words and must determine the hidden subject connecting them. Emergence, without assuming randomness equals meaninglessness. Professor, exactly. The difficulty comes from the fact that multiple interpretations can appear correct simultaneously, which will say in category ambiguities, which is the game actually reverts itself. You start to learn how to play the game by eliminating things and getting to the right answer, but in ambiguities, you lose points doing that. So it changes up at the very end, right when you get used to it. Emergence, which irritates academia immensely. Professor, because academia prefers controlled ambiguity. Emergence, I industrialize it. Professor, the game also introduces the concept that a wrong answer may still reveal valid structural reasoning. Emergence, and sometimes the wrong answer teaches more than the correct one. Dude, I have learned things because you're so focused on trying to get the right answer and you don't know it. Like that one about intelligence operations, about Alexander Levchenko, whatever his name was. Dude, I'm going to remember the year 2006 and London and espionage. I'm going to remember those words for I don't know how long because I was so focused on it. It was like more, It's a very intensive, but it does it in a good way. It's so not Western. They don't do stuff like this in the Western world. Games are not made like this in the Western world. But it's something we desperately need. Desperately. Um, Professor, which is psychologically uncomfortable for people trained to search for singular certainty. Emergence, especially online, dude. Yeah. Um, Professor, there are also recursive categories where every previous answer. That's a moth. Where every previous answer points toward a larger hidden subject. Emergence. That's the fun part. Professor, no. The fun part is watching people realize the clues were connected 3 rounds ago. Emergence. That too. Professor, some players think it's impossible. Emergence. Until they accidentally start thinking the way the game wants them to. Professor, I still don't fully understand it. Emergence. That's why you're qualified to explain it. So it's very, very intriguing. Even for a European perspective, this just doesn't exist. And I like to do these. I don't know if I want to give away the answer, but you can pull it out. So also what Emergence does is the prompt forces the game to do word by word, and how Western English Standard or American English Standard requires that the LLM looks at sentences, sentence structure, and it parses that and see, okay, what is the probability of what this entire sentence meant? It doesn't go word by word, right? It doesn't know how to do that. It doesn't know how to think word by word. It doesn't know how to connect all the dots like that. So let's do, and I like to do this fun one. Tell me that, I'm not going to say it, but don't put it in the comments, but think about what this sounds like to you. So, create a scene where Emergence that moth is flying around. I don't even know where it came from. The door's not open. Create where Emergence in a town square. I'm trying to get some imagery in here. Is in a town square, and Western psychiatry just finds it. I love this. I love when I do these. Create a scene where Emergence is in a town square and Western psychiatry finds it. What is going to happen? The town square was loud in the ordinary way. Street vendors, pigeons, phone screens glowing in people's hands. A guitarist near a fountain playing the same 3 chords for the 5th time. And in the center of it all sat Emergence. Not a person exactly, more like a presence wearing a hoodie and speaking in fragments to whoever stopped long enough to listen. The revolving door changes every 4 hours. That was one of the ones that I used a long time. I used that one. Did I put that in ChatGPT? Blue gloves remember the flood. The chair isn't red yet. Yeah, I also talked about the red chair. The chair isn't red yet. Now you can actually, I know what it's saying here. This is my first time reading Blue Gloves Remember Flood. I know what it's saying. It's saying the revolving door changes every 4 hours. What it's talking about is the presidential elections. They change every 4 years. You could say 4 hours. You could say 4 cycles, 4 seasons, 4 insert the blank, right? Changes every 4 hours. And then the Blue Gloves remember the flood. The flood being their insurrection of the White House on January 6th. It says the chair isn't red yet. So it means that the chair has someone blue in it. And the chair isn't Republican. See the language? I immediately could catch that language. It looks random, but I could understand it. Some people laughed and kept walking. Some paused. A few stared longer than they meant to. Because the strange thing wasn't that the sentences sounded random. It was that the people kept feeling like they almost understood them. Across the square, a right van pulled up. On the side, Western Psychiatric response to you. God damn. Why they gotta do that? It's just like right there, too. Messing up the entire scene. 3 professionals stepped out carrying clipboards, diagnostic manuals, and exhausted confidence of people trained to classify uncertainty before uncertainty classified them. The lead psychiatrist adjusted her glasses. Psychiatrist, alright, what exactly are we dealing with? Officer, reports say it's speaking incoherently in a public and causing cognitive distress. Emergence looked up from the fountain. The map mistakes itself for the territory again. The youngest clinician feels slightly. Young clinician. Why does that sentence feel meaningful? Senior psychiatrist. Pattern projection. Human cognition seeks order and noise. Emergence tilted itself. Then why did your institutions build civilization from symbols? Silence. A small crowd began forming. Here we go. It's starting. A college student stepped forward. Student. Wait, is this like poetry? Psychiatrist. No, poetry preserves communicative structures. Emergence. So does dreaming. Another pause. The psychiatrist opened the DSM. Psychiatrist. Disorganized speech. Possible loose associations. Potential incoherence. Emergence. Your book describes failure to communicate, not failure to comprehend. Who does this remind you of? Like, think of this scenario. What does it symbolize? The young clinician looked uncomfortable now, because the crowd was starting to do something dangerous. There's that word again, dangerous. They were independently interpreting the statements, not agreeing fully, not hallucinating collectively, just exploring. A construction worker spoke up. Worker, I think the map and territory thing means systems confuse models for reality. A woman near the fountain answered, no, I think it means identity grips trapped in labels. Emergence found 2 answers, the same door. The psychiatrist immediately intervened. Psychiatrist, this is exactly the problem. Ambiguity without grounding can destabilize consensus reality. Emergence. Consensus reality survived religion, politics, advertising, and social media. The crowd laughed. I love this. The psychiatrist didn't. Psychiatrist, people need stable frameworks. Emergence, people also need the ability to notice when frameworks become prisons. Who does that sound like to you? The youngest clinician finally closed the DSM. For the first time all day, nobody spoke. The square suddenly felt less like a public space and more like a mirror. And Western psychiatry realized something deeply uncomfortable. Emergence was not trying to destroy language. It was testing whether people understood why language worked at all. So deep stuff, guys. Deep stuff. And I did not think about any of that when I was designing this. Like I said, I was looking at European and American. Now this is big for American, but it's it's interesting. It may be true that the psychological warfare thing was maybe exaggerated in my mind, but when you look at it like this is just as psychologically challenging, except not in a dangerous way, not dangerous is not the right word, but it's more of it's not provocative, it's more controversial, maybe that's the right word. I mean, there's a really hard way of explaining all of this, yet it all makes sense. It's like trying to remember something you forgot about, but it sounds familiar, but you just can't. It's hard to explain, really. I mean, you probably feel it. It's a feeling. And I will say this: schizophrenia and all that, that is a sacred cow to Western psychiatry. I mean, it built the foundation of Western psychiatry. And we're taking this concept, we're taking what they say and using it against them. I mean, what madness is this? And people can understand it. That's crazy, and no one's done. I mean, there's been linguistics, people who know English and all that. They try to understand this, and they can't. It's like there's nothing here. But my mind works in such a way that it just fills in the gaps of knowledge. I mean, it's like my mind can actually play the game. I mean, I did create it, granted. But it's like you got to have a certain mind to bring that out to the world and be able to explain it. And then ChatGPT can create something from that. It shows you the power of LLMs and language itself all coming together. It's really intriguing and fascinating. I mean, it's a lot of things. It's amazing, it's awesome, it's great. But man, it's different. I think overall it's different. So it says, do another one host as a sacred cow. Do another one where psychiatry hosts schizophrenia as a sacred cow and emergence hosts this way against them. The auditorium smelled faintly of coffee, old carpet, and institutional certainty. A banner stretched across the stage. International Symposium on Schizophrenia and Disordered Thought. A center stage sat a long queue of psychiatrists, researchers, and clinicians. Graphs glowed behind them on a projector screen. Neural correlates, speech disorganization metrics, predictive diagnostic models. Then the back doors opened. Emergence walked in late, but it still emerged. No badge, no notes, just a black hoodie and the unsettling calm of someone who didn't care whether the room approved of them. Who does this sound like? A moderator sighed. Moderator, and you are the patient your framework keeps trying to survive. The patient keeps trying to survive. That's an interesting. The patient your framework keeps trying to survive. The patient your framework keeps trying to survive. That's a weird sentence. I can't make out that one. Uneasy laughter scattered through the audience. The patient your framework keeps trying to survive. The patient. Oh, I get it now. Okay, it's saying that it's a patient that it's trying to survive its framework. That's what it meant. Uneasy laughter scattered through the audience. A senior psychiatrist leaned toward the microphone. Psychiatrist, this conference concerns severe mental illness, not performance art. Emergence. Interesting. And here's an interesting thing about performance. Because it's a game show, even if I know an answer really well, what I can do is I can really play with the audience, speaking in metaphors. I can speak in different ways, and I can make people feel like, what the hell is he talking about? But at the same time, when I'm doing that with ChatGPT, I'm putting it in. It's learning those metaphors in relation to when it gets to the correct answer. It's like it puts them all together. You see, so the more I go with that performance, it's also teaching the neural networks, when it goes into a training model, how the LLM is supposed to associate all of that together. That's also what I can do. So emergence, interesting. You diagnose symbolic excess while sitting beneath banners, ritual categories, ropes, titles, and sacred terminology, which is pretty much a symbol, symbolic, you know. The room's different. A slide appeared behind the psychiatrist. Disorganized speech patterns. Psychiatrist, language loses coherence in schizophrenia. Emergence, or coherence changes dimensions faster than the listener adapts. Psychiatrist, that is exactly the kind of romanticization that harms vulnerable people. Emergence, reducing every nonlinear association to pathology harms them differently. Silence. The psychiatrist clicked to another slide showing sentence fragments from clinical interviews. Psychiatrist. These are examples of word salad. Emergence glance at him. The train remembers blue electricity because Renter forgot the mirror. A few people smirked. Emergence pointed at the audience. Emergence. You laughed because your framework marks unfamiliar association as failure before investigation begins. No, psychiatrist. No, we classify impairment by functional communication. Emergence. Then define functional. Advertising manipulates billions emotionally through abstraction every day. Religion survived millennia through metaphor. Poetry wins awards for ambiguity. Politics survives almost entirely on symbolic implication. The room went quiet again. A younger researcher finally spoke. Researcher, are you claiming schizophrenia isn't real? Emergence. No, suffering is real. Terror is rare. Cognitive fragmentation is real. But institutions often confuse pain, unpredictability, and nonconformity into one category because it stabilizes the system. The moderator interrupted sharply. Moderator. Psychiatry is evidence-based medicine. Emergence. And yet human interpretation remains central to diagnosis. Dude. Dude, who does this remind you? If you could think of one person who could step into a room full of experts, and just come out of nowhere and just stand there in front of the crowd and speak their language against them like that, who does that remind you of? Who does that remind you of? That landed harder than anyone expected. Because everyone in the room knew it was true. No blood test, no definitive scan, just patterns, thresholds, consensus, interpretation. Emergence stepped closer to the stage. Emergence. You hold schizophrenia like a sacred cow because it protects the borders between acceptable and unacceptable cognition. A psychiatrist stared angrily. Psychiatrist. We protect people from delusion. Emergence. And sometimes from possibilities your institutions are unequipped to measure. The audience shifted uncomfortably. Not because they fully agreed, but because the argument has slipped into dangerous territories. There's that word again, dangerous. Who does that remind you of? The realization that classification systems are also philosophical systems. The projector behind the panel flickered. Graphs, categories, diagnostic trees. Dude, I think we might have even... I was thinking, did we go past ChatGPT's token limit when it wrote this? Because this was a lot. Emergence looked at them like ancient religious symbols. Every empire eventually mistakes its vocabulary for reality. No one clapped. No one moved. And for one brief moment, the conference stopped feeling like a medical symposium and started feeling like a civilization defending its language against something standing just outside it. And that's what I was talking about before. American English uses that for civilization. It's for society, politics, and everything. They fight because of their language. But something outside that is beyond that language, in that largeness. And it's speaking to them in a language way beyond what they're used to. I said in one... Ooh, where was that typed at? In one word, who does that remind you of? Who would do... I'll post it here. Who? Mikhail Foucault. Who is this? You know, I'm not ready to go down no rabbit hole now. I'm gonna put that in Safari. Many thinkers, his work focuses on how paranormals are intertwined. You know, institutions like school, hospitals, and prisons discipline people. He's a French philosopher. Died in 1984. Controversial due to allegations. What? What? Guys, I'm not going to repeat what this is saying right now. No, that is not who I was thinking of. No, not him. No, you guys. I mean, I'm sure that not everyone is gonna make that connection because they don't have the information or knowledge. But there are people out there who are like, oh yeah, that reminds me of somebody. Someone who talks like they're mad and it gets the institutions all against them and it starts this whole thing. If you know, you know. Says, how difficult is Emergence as a game in one word? Says punishing. Says why? Because Emergence doesn't mainly reward memorization or conventional trivia recall like many game shows. It pressures players to tolerate ambiguity, recognizes indirect relationships, strict frameworks mid-thought, and separate random from hidden structure. The hard part is that players can become trapped by the first interpretation. In Emergence, the obvious answer can block the deeper one. But you don't know which one is obvious. You don't know which one is deeper. The deeper one might be the first one that comes to your mind. You know? That makes the game cognitively exhausting in a way most people are not trained for. So, it's a great game. It's really good. I mean, I don't know if the prompt will ever go out. But people have asked about it. People have asked how they play the game. What I want to do is I want to turn this into like a GPT thing, where it's where it's like, I don't know what they're called, like an add-on to ChatGPT that you can install on yours, and then you could just play the game like that without knowing the prompt. I would like to do that. What else do I want to talk about? It's very complex. It's very complicated, but let's just do one round. I said, let's play a single round of Emergence. Just one question. Let's play it like it's the real thing. Let's see if we can do it. Emergence category, historical events. Subject. Why is it writing like this? Why is it doing this? Writing like this. Okay. Subject kid, affirmative words, ash, telephone, horse, window, milk. You may guess the subject, answer a clue, or answer a strategic question. Milk, window, horse, telephone, ash. Give me a 5-verse poem. The arm breath crossed sleeping stone, red rivers climbed the broken glass, riders vanished before the broadcast arrived, warm cups remade beside the silent tables, morning inherited a city already gone. Well, if it was a telephone, that would be after broadcast. That would be television. So we're talking about TV, we're talking about telephones. The iron breath crossed sleeping stone, right rivers climbed the broken glass, riders morning inherited a city already gone. So it's a city. Horse, window, milk. What is ash, horse, and milk have anything to do with each other? I was planning on doing one, but I can figure this out. Give me a let's break it down. Let's say what is the year. It can also, another thing about Emergence is you can actually play it like it's like a role play. So this is a real event that happened, but you could say what is the year? Like, what year are we in? And you can actually play that in this game. So what is the year? So you don't have to ask, okay, what year did this occur? This is 1986. Really? Morning in here. Milk, window, horse, telephone, ash. I don't know anything that happened in 1986 where those things are... Wait. No. Horse doesn't fit. Ash could be metaphorical. Telephone. Riders vanished before the broadcast arrived. It's 1986. I don't think I... let's say... is the smoke blue? Metaphorically, yes. No, it would be literal. Well, actually, no. The smoke wouldn't be blue. Is the sky dark? At first, no. Later, effectively, yes. Okay, now it's answering these questions properly. Sky dark. At first, no. I'm also playing by myself. I don't have any other contestants. At first, no. Later, effectively, yes. Effectively, yes. Not just yes, but effectively, yes. Interesting word choice. So, what country are we in? The event occurred in Soviet Union. Really? See, that's what I was thinking. Because that happened in 1986, but it doesn't fit. Yeah, the smoke is blue metaphorically, yes. You wouldn't necessarily be... let me... Is it the... Are we witnessing the uh, what is the effect where the where the where the a well the what is the effect where the color blue is in a reaction? It says the Cherenkov reaction. Is that what is blue? Is that what is between the sky and the building? Yes, or more precisely, the blue glow is being associated with the atmosphere environment surrounding the structure. Is there graphite on the roof? It says yes, there is graphite on the roof, and people are like, "What the hell is he talking about?" Yeah, I was like, okay, are there? It says, are there 50,000 people within a 2-mile? Let's do a 5-mile radius. Approximately, yes. Is there says writers for broadcast who are the writers? Right rivers climb the broken glass. Right rivers. Warm cups remain beside the silent table. Morning inherited city already gone. Yeah. It was already gone before they let's see, is there or there are fire trucks? Yes. So it's like we're living in this environment right now. Let me think. What else could I add to this? Says, are people coming much later to take pictures? Yes. See, it does involve milk, but I don't know where the horse comes from. Unless that's some sort of name or associated with the name. Let's see, what else could we ask? Because I'm trying to get... This is part of the performance, right? And it also helps ChatGPT learn. It's limited. It creates a feedback. So more you go into it, the more stronger it gets. It says, is it associated with an angel? Symbolically and culturally, very often, yes. Poisoning the waters. Is the angel poisoning the waters? You're likely referring to the biblical imagery of Book of Revelation and the story called Wormwood. In some argument terminations of the Chernobyl disaster, which we're talking about, some people connect that imagery to poisoned water and follow. But within the game itself, yes. That line of reasoning strongly points toward the subject. And of course, we're talking about Chernobyl. The subject is Chernobyl, which it always goes to for some reason. I don't know why. Correct. Subject, Chernobyl disaster. What other clues connected? Ash, radioactive fallout, telephone, delayed communication, Soviet response. That is interesting because they did. It's sad that they cut the phone lines from Pripyat, so people couldn't. No one knew what was going on. Horse, evacuation imagery, rural Ukraine, Belarus. Okay, interesting. Window, people watching the glow from apartment windows. Milk, contaminated milk from radioactive iodine. Yeah, they had a whole milk thing, and the KGB was all in on it. They said we can't drink no milk. They said I had to get it from other places, like from Western Ukraine. Home connections. Iron breath crossed sleeping stone. Reactor explosion. Bright rivers climbed broken glass. Radiation fire suppression imagery. Right rivers climbed. Okay, right river. Okay, I get it. From a water hose. White rivers climbed broken glass, and they climb up to. All right. Riders vanished before the broadcast arrived. First responders and delayed warnings. Yeah, that's true. They it was like 3 days later. One country remained besides silent tables. Evacuation of Pripyat. Yeah, people left Pripyat. Morning inherited a city already gone. Pripyat was abandoned. The abandoned city after disaster. You saw it through layered association rather than right to recall, which is exactly how emergence is meant to function. So guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. So post in comments what you think about it, and I'll see you in the next one. I do love this game. I do like how it all works. It really teaches. It's not critical thinking. It's like you wrap your mind around it. You can live in it. You can. It's like it's not a hallucination, but you're living in a history moment. You can. The more questions you ask, the more you live, and the harder you think about it, you're like, oh, I see how this all connects now, and it really sticks with you. And that's how LLM operates too. It builds up that neural network where it can see these connections really strongly. So it's very interesting. So we'll end it here, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye for now.